Welcome to the Epic Success Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Shannon Irvine. Today, we are going to unveil the mysteries of your brain. We're going to talk about how the brain wires success, how it wires failure, and what you can do about it. We're going to uncover that success switch that is in your brain. Did you know that you have one of those? And we are going to really dive into what is the mechanism that's going on without your permission or knowledge that is running 90% of everything you do on a daily basis. And how can you tap into it so it becomes your biggest superpower, so that your brain starts to work for you instead of against you, and so that you can actually build networks in your brain toward the very thing you want most, and neutralize and erase the things that have been holding you back. That's what we're talking about on the podcast today. I hope you're ready. Here we go. All right, so we're going to dive deep into science today. We're going to be talking about what's going on in your brain that has you having this conversation. Now, hopefully I'm not the only one that's had this conversation. Hopefully you have too. But have you ever had the conversation where there's something that you really want, like that thing that you want more than anything? Maybe it's a business, maybe it's to scale, maybe it's a launch that you want to get to a certain level. Maybe it's getting past that six-figure mark or $20,000 a month. Whatever it is for you, you're trying to get to that next level. And at the same time as you're trying to push into something that is uncomfortable, unfamiliar, something you've never been at before, and you're trying to do all the right things, and I'm putting that in air quotes, you also have this other part of you that is telling you stories. It's telling you things like, who do you think you are to be trying something this big? That's audacious. Or maybe it's prideful to think you could be that big of an influence, right? Or things like, maybe I don't want anybody to find out that I don't know what I'm talking about. So you start to play smaller than the actual vision. You start to shrink back, slow down, procrastinate, or create a level of perfection that nobody could possibly get to, and end up in overwhelm and kind of settle back into what is safe and familiar versus the thing that you really, really want, that's keeping you up at night, that's keeping you driven toward doing it. So you're in this tug of war between, I want this thing, but these stories that keep popping up in your brain around, what if you fail? What if somebody finds out that you're not good enough? What if somebody comments and says that you're not worth it? All of those automatic negative thoughts, limiting beliefs, we call them brake pedal beliefs, because as entrepreneurs, we tend to have our foot on the gas almost all the time, doing the things, learning new things, trying. But we also unknowingly have our foot on the brake at the exact same time. And we wonder, why can't I get there? Why am I going in circles? And why is this not working? And then we come to the conclusion that it's probably just not working for me. And it's probably something wrong with me. Why can't I figure this out? Why has she gotten to where she's gotten and I haven't been able to? So we don't say it, but we get kind of jealous of the success of others, and we have that become a reflection on ourselves. So if you've been in this murky water of the brain, I need you to know a couple things. First of all of that conversation isn't your fault. When you were growing up, your prefrontal cortex, I'm touching the top of my forehead, that's where your prefrontal cortex is, the thinking brain, the one we make decisions with, is not mature until 21 for females and, sorry guys, 24 for males. So your prefrontal cortex that allows you to have self-control, allows you to actually analyze things and decide, is this good or is this bad? Do I believe this? Do I not? It is barely even developed. It slowly develops over time. So whether you realize it or not, you're taking on the stories of the environment in which you grew up in. Now, here's what I know about all of us. We've all grown up in either the worst or the best or somewhere in between in the home environment, right? So here's the great news. It does not matter regardless, you've walked away with some stories, not of your choosing, stories about what it means to be successful, what it means to fail, what money means, what worth is and isn't, and how you get love, among other things. But those are the big ones. Now, the brain, your beautiful brain, wants to keep you safe and familiar. This is the monkey part of our brain. Sometimes that's called, it's the base part of our brain, that its nervous system is connected to it. And its only job is to keep us from dying and so keep us alive, safe, and to keep things just as they are. Well, so many people, 97% of people, walk around never questioning the automated subconscious stories that they learned from childhood, that they didn't have the prefrontal cortex to say, I don't think I want that, right? And they go into adulthood, they go into even a business entrepreneur venture, and all of these stories start coming up and blocking your success. Why? Well, let me tell you, if you're an entrepreneur, you got to deal with money. If you're an entrepreneur, you got to deal with the story about success. And let me tell you, you got to deal with the story about failure. And then anytime you're putting yourself out there, it is shaking the foundation, coming up against the foundation of what you're worth, your enoughness, who are you, right? All the things that you took on as a young adult or a child that you never chose consciously, that literally as a young person, you just fully accept anything that's been repeated over and over and over again in the family of origin, or even your environment in school. If it was repeated enough, your brain takes that from you. And instead of you having to think it, it puts it on automation. It saves glucose, it saves energy, and it fires without your permission or your knowledge. And it runs, okay, you got to hear this, 90% of your daily decisions. So we think we're going about stuff and we're deciding things in our prefrontal thinking brain, but that's only 10 to 20% of the time. 80 to 90% of the time, your subconscious automated stories are firing. And we know this from neuroscience. We can see this in scans, and it's informing your decisions. So your decisions, 80 to 90% of the time, are coming from that place. And we're wondering, why am I spinning in circles and not getting where I want? So I want to break this down a little bit today and talk about how does the brain wire a thought that ultimately becomes an automated story, and how can we neutralize and erase those stories that have held us back. And we intuitively know what those stories are when we start leaning into trying to do something bigger than where we're at right now, right? You've experienced it, right? You start to go live, you get the butterflies in your stomach, and then that voice, people are going to find out. What if my mom watches? What if somebody shows up and says I'm not enough? Those conversations that you have in your head aren't you. Those are conversations that are coming from your brain saying, hold up, wait a minute, this is in contradiction to what is an automation. Again, your brain is wired to keep you safe and familiar. Safe and familiar may mean success is only for those who work their butts off. Safe and familiar might mean don't fail, because if you fail, people will find out and that means you're nothing, right? Success, or a story might be money doesn't grow on trees. You got to work hard for your money. And rich people, they're evil. And God doesn't like people who make money. Okay, I'm just sharing some of mine. I just want you to hear some of what's gone on in my mind before I uncovered this neurocoaching model and how the brain wires success and failure and thinking. And what is it for you? What do you hear that you don't repeat necessarily, but man, it just always pops up when you're trying to go for those big things, when you're trying to get to the next level or do the launch or put yourself out there or ask for a coaching, call with somebody or whatever it is. Stories about success. If you had a story growing up that maybe you had a parent that was super successful and they were never, ever, ever around, and all you wanted was love from them and they weren't there. Well, guess what? You have a block around success, because success for your brain is going to equal, I'm not there for my family. So what'll happen is you'll get close and then you'll procrastinate. You'll get close and then you'll get into perfectionism. You'll get close and get into overwhelm. Your brain, that's your brain's way of protecting you. It's saying, hey, whoa, slow up now. You're getting a little close to that success thing. Don't you remember? Success does not equal love because you lost the access to the parent that you wanted their love, right? And so I guess the great news I need to tell you is you don't need to know what all those stories are in order to neutralize and erase them. What you need to do is to get really crystal clear that you are the creator of your thoughts. And thoughts get repeated enough, become automated subconscious stories. And in our neurocoaching certification, we teach this. We also coach this in our transformational coaching group. But really the key is to know that any situation you come up against, launching the new thing, going live, whatever it is for you, is neutral. That situation is neutral. That's why you can have two different people that go and do a webinar, right? And one person they both have 10 people show up and one person buy. The one person is like, oh my gosh, 10 people showed up. This is amazing. I'm so excited. And one person bought. Wow, that's 10%. I'm crushing it. And the other person is like, oh, 10 people showed up. Oh, why? Why am I doing this? I knew it wouldn't work, right? Now I don't have to tell you the situation is the exact same. It's a fact, right? They had a webinar, 10 people showed up, one person bought. But the difference is, what did the person think? The thought, we know this from neuroscience, the thought center of the brain fires microseconds before the limbic and emotional center of the brain fires, which is part of the subconscious. So we know that the thoughts create emotions. That's how, without even knowing these people, you could tell me, you could immediately know person one who was all excited. What were I already told you excited, but what were her emotions? What was her physical stature like? Like, you already know she's full of joy. She's excited. She can't wait. Her shoulders are back. She's smiling. How about the second person? You already know without even knowing this person or talking to them that their shoulders are slumped, that they're down, that they're depressed, that they feel like they can't do it. So thoughts create emotions. Situation, we call this STEVDAR in our neurocoaching model. Situation creates the thought. The thought is based on old automated stories. The thought creates an emotion. If it gets repeated enough, about 67 times we've learned, your brain, looking to save glucose, looking to save energy, says, wait a minute, if I could give your subconscious a voice, it says, hang on a second. Looks like you've been saying this about 60 or 67 times. You must believe this. Since you believe this, I'm going to make your brain more efficient, and I'm going to take that thought that you can't possibly succeed, or the succeeding doesn't equal love, or whatever it is. I'm going to take that thought and I'm going to now put it in automation. So what's going to happen now is you won't ever get an opportunity to not think that anymore. And 80 to 90% of the time, it's going to fire without your permission, because it's what you believe. Your subconscious is not moral or doesn't see your vision board unless you're repeating it enough. Your subconscious's job is to make your brain efficient, to automate. And so as you're going along and you're not even aware, so becoming aware that you are the creator of your thoughts is really the first step to start to filter the thoughts of, is this thought taking me to where I want to go, or is it taking me away? Because there is not a neutral thought, right? So situation creates the thought, which creates the emotion. We cascade down to enough repetition becomes belief, gets automated in that subconscious. Now, when it does that, that's where our identity gets created. So let's talk about webinar number 2 person who's down and says, like, what was I thinking? I knew I couldn't do this. Say that he or she has been saying that over and over. I knew I couldn't do this, right? So from that place, 80% to 90% of that person's decisions, actions, and therefore results will come from that automated, pre-programmed place. So do you think failure is more obviously going to happen to that person that already has the automation that this isn't going to work? Their decisions are going to come from that place. How they show up is going to come from that place. The actions that they take are going to come from that place, and therefore their results. Now, here's the great news. Because we have really discovered this neuroscience pattern in the brain of how does a thought combine with emotion? How does that thought and emotion combine to become a belief? How does belief automate in the subconscious? And how does that automation now run 90% of the show? We've now got the roadmap to your brain. So we understand now that if we can get in and really look at these pieces within the STEPDAR model in the neurocoaching plan of how we coach our model, you can actually identify the thought that is wreaking havoc on the things that you want. So a big one for me, just to give an example, was when I was growing my business originally. I could get all the way up to $199,999. No joke. I would get right up there. I mean, like right to the limit. And then I would do something to pull it back down. I would procrastinate, or I would just start a new project, and it would all look like I was busy, but it would always come back down without a shadow of a doubt. And I'm like, what the heck? What is the story? So I started using my own coaching model, got to the point where I used to hear my family say, we would drive through this neighborhood, right? And I remember now my dad saying they make about $200,000 a year, and they do it on the backs of good people. Whoa. And we did that a lot. So it repeated a lot. So in my sweet little subconscious mind, $200,000 a year equals bad person, using people. I have a high value for people. I love serving people. I love doing right by people. That's an important thing to me. So you can see how my brain was saying, warning, 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 you're approaching this dollar amount that's going to make you a bad person. And all of it was going on without my knowledge or my permission. So this is happening for you, whether you realize it or not. And the great news is that it's as easy as building Legos to get in there, to discover what those thoughts are, to start to neutralize and erase those. We do that through a process called the mind matrix, which is based on synaptic pruning. We're not going to talk about that today, but understanding that the way your brain automates success and the way your brain automates failure and money stories and worth stories all happens because your brain is trying to save energy and glucose. And it's this efficient machine that only automates what's been repeated. So I always tell people, like, these stories, they're not your fault. But now that you know this, like now that you have an exposure to the neuroscience of success, now that you know this is how your brain wires anything that you want, any success that you want, and removes anything that you do not want that's standing in your way, any bad habit, anything that you want to neutralize and erase, it follows the same pattern. I don't know about you. I'm a step-by-step girl. I love the idea, and that's what made me so obsessed with learning it, is if the brain works in the same way, no matter what the thought is, can we hack it? Can we get in there? And can we use the scientific principles to neutralize and erase through synaptic pruning and through neuroplasticity? Could we create a new network that goes to the place and makes that six-figure business and all the money that they can ever use to create good in the world, and reframing failure and knowing your worth and all of those things? If we could make that safe and familiar in your brain, then success just becomes inevitable, right? Because the same process works. You have a thought and it gets repeated enough times that it becomes belief. Now, you got to know, your brain needs to believe it before you will see it. Your brain needs to know that this is what you believe, that this is the thing that you're repeating as if it's already done, and your brain starts to receive it as if it's already a foregone conclusion that it's happening. You believe it. And when that happens, I call it magic, but it is science. Your brain starts to work for you instead of against you. It starts automating the things that you want versus holding you back. It actually automates the success. You'll start seeing opportunities come to you, and business happens with ease and with joy and lightness instead of the hustle and the grind and the push. you actually start pulling it. I always joke around that I talk about the science behind why the woo works. I'm a God girl, you might know that. So like, this is really like how we are wired. We were never intended to be on autopilot without our permission, right? We were intended to be creators of our own thoughts and create the environments that will create the best outcome. But it is a broken world. And so no matter how amazing or how not so amazing the family of origin was, we come out with stories. But the great news is we have the power and we have the process to be able to start to neutralize and erase those that aren't serving your highest and best good in the world, and build for your brain what we call brain prime, such an automation that your brain already sees it as finished. And here's the greatest news in the world. What you automate in your brain, what you automate and get an automation, what you automate, you create. What you automate, you create. Now, you know that because what's been on automation has created your current circumstances without you trying, right? And so the beautiful news about your brain is it's a tool that's been given to you to maximize, to optimize, and to be able to truly create a success story and a story about failure that you as an adult really want. And once that starts happening, the power to truly create in this world, I always call it co-create, because I feel like God gives you the ideas and the desires in your heart, and then you create this amazing stuff in the world. But that happens more and more, mostly because your brain sees it and believes it. And once it believes it, you see it. And once you automate, you create. So I wanted to break down a little bit of the brain science of success, the brain science of failure, and how your brain works through this and how you can hack that system to truly, truly become the creator of the thoughts that create the life and business that you love. I would love to hear how this podcast has served you today. Of course, I'm on the socials at Dr. Shannon. Always tag me and let me know what you thought of the podcast. And of course, if you get an opportunity to leave a 5-star review, that is like a big old warm hug for podcasters. So thank you so much for doing that. We love highlighting those that do in our social media feed because we appreciate you so much. So as you're going out in your week and you're thinking about what you've learned today, I'd love for you to just do one simple thing. So I want to land this into one actionable step that you can start to take. Now, if you want to go deeper, you can reach out to us and get into our transformational coaching groups. Or if you're a coach, I really want to encourage you to go to drshannonirvine.com/coach and get on our free live training about how you can get certified in this neurocoaching model. But what I want you to do today is I want you to do this. Take your thinking off autopilot. Become aware. Just imagine you have a filter with you. And as you're leaning in to the thing that you want most in this world, as you're going live, as you're trying to launch, as you're taking the steps that are somewhat uncomfortable for you to take because you haven't been there before, start to listen to what your brain does. Remember, your brain's job is to keep you safe and familiar. So when you're in resistance, it's that place between what's an automation and what you want, right? It feels tense. It feels like tug of war. When you feel it, sometimes you feel it in your stomach or your chest, you feel tense and resistance, right? When you feel and step into those situations, you'll hear the story. It's not mysterious. Your brain is very obvious when it comes to this. And you probably already have an idea. When that happens, just ask yourself, does this thought get me to the vision or does it take me further away? And then I want to just encourage you to go deeper in the work so that you can truly teach your brain to automate so you can create it. And I appreciate all of you out there trying to create goodness in the world, trying to get out there with your mission and your vision. In my opinion, nothing better than entrepreneurs, side hustlers, and those who are out there creating transformations in people's lives. The only thing standing in your way are those brake pedal beliefs that once we get that foot off the brake, sky's the limit. All right, that's it for this week on the Epic Success Podcast. I'll see you next week. Bye for now.